Atlanta Falcons should absolutely, positively, 100% sign a player who was suspended 6 games. I know that sounds strange and upside down, but I'm going to explain why on today's episode, and we're going to look at some ESPN running back rankings for the 2024 season and see where Bijan Robinson fell. But Tashaun Gipson was suspended earlier this offseason 6 games for violating the NFL's PED policy. Now, he released a statement today clarifying the suspension a little bit and that he took a substance last offseason working out. He didn't realize that was on the list, and he takes responsibility. It was his fault, yada, yada, yada. This is the same song and dance we see every single time a player is suspended for violating the PED policy. Now, why would the Atlanta Falcons be interested in signing or, adding a player who's suspended 6 games? Suspended players do not count against your 53-man roster. So adding Tashaun Gipson is a little bit like having a 54th player on your roster. He's not going to count for a roster spot the first 6 weeks of the season. Suspensions only include regular season games, so he can participate during training camp and preseason. But once the regular season rolls around, he goes to the reserved/suspended list where, like I said, he won't count towards a roster spot. So really, a team has nothing to lose by adding Tashaun Gipson unless they feel like morally he would not be a good fit in their franchise. And players get suspended for a wide variety of reasons. Cam Sutton just got suspended 8 games for a very different reason, and one that I could see why people wouldn't be interested in adding that to their clubhouse. But Tashaun Gipson, I think, was signed or suspended because he made a mistake. Like, not a mistake as in, oh, he did a bad thing and we're going to call it a mistake. No, he just genuinely didn't look at what was in the pills he was taking and didn't realize that was on the list of banned substances. And when you look at the Falcons safety room, Jesse Bates is an all-pro safety. You don't have to worry about him. But then you've got DeMarco Hellams and you've got Richie Grant. Micah Abernathy is more of a special teamer. And you look at the young safeties following Jesse Bates, and it makes you wonder, like, man, the Falcons are making a lot of really young bets this upcoming season. Zach Harrison, Clark Phillips, DeMarco Hellams. Would it really be that bad of an idea to sign a veteran safety who has played some of the best football of his career the last few seasons that wouldn't count against your 53-man roster for the first 6 weeks of the season? And chances are when his suspension is up, unfortunately, someone's going to be injured and they'll go to injured reserve, and that will open up a roster spot. And then Tashaun Gipson could slide right in. And listen, if things aren't going well with DeMarco Hellams and you don't trust Richie Grant to play a lot of snaps because you didn't trust Richie Grant last year to play a lot of snaps when you benched him the last third of the season, insert Tashaun Gipson, who will have fresh legs, won't be banged up or anything like that, can come in and provide kind of a jolt as everyone's sort of entering the 50% mark, midway mark of the season, and Tashaun Gipson walks in like it's September for him at the end of October. That could be a huge boost to your secondary. And this is going to be a secondary that's going to be busy this upcoming season. Like, I'll say it out loud, the Falcons pass rush is probably not going to be one of the most ferocious league-leading pass rushing units in the NFL. This DB room is going to be running all over the field covering guys. So, having an extra safety in the back end with a lot of experience, 33 games the last 2 seasons for one of the best defenses in football in the San Francisco 49ers, what's there to lose? If Tashaun Gipson is bad in practice and looks like a 34-year-old washed-up NFL player, all right, you sign him, suspension's up, you release him. He's not going to cost you much. He's not going to be asking for a whole lot. He just got suspended 6 games. He would be deliriously happy if his phone rang with a contract offer. It'll be a vet minimum, 1 year, $1.5 million contract. And by the way, because he's suspended 6 games, like, it won't even be that full vet minimum contract. It's hardly going to count against the cap. Someone tell me one negative reason as to why the Falcons should not sign Tashaun Gipson. I've got nothing. This is not a safety room that I am uberly and overly confident in. It's got Jesse Bates, but there are question marks after that. Bring on Gipson. Won't count against your roster. Can provide some mid-season reinforcements. And he's been really good lately. And we're going to look at those stats in just a second. But I'll turn it over to you. I've babbled on long enough. Should the Falcons add a safety? Give me an S for sign or give me a P for pass down below in the comment section. Some more background information on Gipson. Last year for the 49ers, started 16 games. Would have started all 17 if they had something to play for in week 18. 1 interception. Season before that, 5 interceptions, 2 interceptions, then 2 interceptions in the 2 years leading up to his time in the Bay Area. I mean, you toss Tashaun Gipson in with the rest of the safeties for the Falcons. I mean, he's got better numbers by some metrics than the two kind of candidates to compete for the other starting safety gig next to Jesse Bates. You look at his PFF ranks over the last 5 years of his NFL career. He's been a bit of a journeyman player. UDFA, if I remember correctly, out of Wyoming, went to the Browns, then got paid by the Jags, then went to the Texans, then went to the Bears, then went to the 49ers. Like, he's been a bit of a journeyman player, no doubt about it. But I'm not saying Tashaun Gipson is some elite level safety. I'm saying for a guy that won't count for a roster spot the first 6 weeks of the season, and you've got young safeties after Jesse Bates, I don't see a downside to adding a veteran player. Like, there's a downside to adding a veteran player like, say, Jamal Adams, where he's going to cost you a little bit money, and he's going to count for a spot on your 53-man roster. But for Gipson, he'll be like a ghost more or less on your roster, and if you've got a problem in your secondary, middle of the way into the season, no problem. Here comes Tashaun Gipson, maybe not to save the day, but to provide some much-needed relief if it gets to that point. The guy, by the way, since entering the league in 2012, he's tied for third with Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus Peters, Richard Sherman as well, in interceptions with 33. There is zero downside to signing Tashaun Gipson. Sign the man. He's not going to be taking or stunting the growth of DeMarco Hellams or Richie Grant. He's hands off for the first 6 weeks of the season. If those young players are balling out and his 6-week suspension is up, all right, you've got a solid backup safety. It didn't cost you more than $1 million. What's the problem? This is the Falcons defense that is going young. And I understand that that's the approach, but that doesn't mean you can't hedge some of your bets. And there are bets being made on young players like Zach Harrison, Clark Phillips, DeMarco Hellams. 3 players all starting, entering the second year of their NFL careers. 3rd-round draft pick, 4th-round draft pick, 7th-round draft pick. Those are shaky bets to make. So why not hedge one of them with a guy that's not going to cost a roster spot the first 6 weeks of the season? All right, that's been my TED Talk on signing Tashaun Gipson. Terry, I know you're watching. Sign the man. Let's make some news in July. All right, next up on the show, I want to check out ESPN's running back rankings. We'll see where they put Bijan Robinson, and then I'll tell you where I've got Robinson ranked in my own running back rankings going into 2024. But our trivia question for today's episode: arrange the 4 NFC South teams in total rushing yards from 2010 to present. Let me know who's first, second, third, and fourth amongst the 4 teams in the NFC South in total rushing yards from 2010 to present combined. All right, let's look at ESPN's running back rankings. So coming in at number 1, they had Christian McCaffrey. That's no real surprise. Number 2, Breece Hall, then Nick Chubb. A little surprise on the Breece Hall bit. I'm a believer in Nick Chubb bouncing back from his knee injury, so I wouldn't doubt the guy. Saquon comes in at 4, then Jonathan Taylor. Bijan at number 6, ahead of Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, and Travis Etienne. Robinson last year, for being the 8th overall pick, was, I wouldn't say disappointing, but maybe leaving us wanting a little bit more in some areas. 976 rushing yards, 4.6 yards a carry, 487 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns on the ground. Like, there were things that I think people had higher expectations for that just were not met by Bijan last year. Now, I don't think that tells the whole story. If you look at total yards, rushing and receiving for Bijan Robinson in 2023, like, he ranks 6th behind Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, James Cook, Rachaad White, and Travis Etienne. So Bijan Robinson proved to be a really good dual threat back in the NFL. And now the focus becomes, all right, let's see Bijan be more of a rusher than just a receiver. Now, I also think context is key here. Look at the top 4 rushing leaders compared to Bijan Robinson, and then look at the amount of games with 15-plus carries. Christian McCaffrey had 12. Derrick Henry, 11. Kyren Williams, 9. James Cook, 7. Like, yeah, if you're going to rush a lot, you're probably going to get a lot of touches as well. That's really important to being a successful back. Bijan Robinson, he had 966 yards. He also only had 5 games where he was given the rock 15 or more times. So in defense of Bijan Robinson, feed the man to get yardage in return. I don't understand the point of drafting him top 10 if you weren't going to use him a lot. And sure, you don't want to run him into the ground completely his rookie year, but there were one too many games last year where it felt like, what are we doing here? Like, Bijan isn't some bust of a draft pick that looks out of shape and can't run in the NFL. Like, he looks the part. He looks the real deal. Now feed him like what you would do to a top 5 running back like the other guys were getting last season. And I am confident and hopeful that Raheem Morris will fix that in 2024. Now, before we look at the rest of today's show, along with my personal running back rankings, if you want to get this Falcons t-shirt and hat combo, it's 45% off when you go to chatsports.com/ATL combo. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. So get it today. Get yourself not only a hat, but a t-shirt as well. 2 pieces of Falcons gear, 45% off at our exclusive code, chatsports.com/ATL combo. Now, an NFL offensive coach in this ESPN article had this to say about Bijan Robinson. If he gets to the second or third level, he's incredibly hard to tackle. Deceptive speed once he gets loose. He reminds me of LeSean McCoy. Very elusive, really hard to touch him. So, looking at Shady McCoy's first 4 years in the NFL, year 1, similar to Bijan, maybe leaving us wanting a little bit more, but I mean, look at the improvement in the following seasons, like 1,000 yards, 1,000 yards. Then he missed some time in 2012, 840 yards. So I do believe that the trajectory for Bijan Robinson is pointing up, and I wouldn't let a 966-yard rookie season be a damper on the next couple of years of his career. So here are my running back rankings. I actually do have Bijan at number 6. I usually like to disagree with ESPN, Bleacher Report, all those guys. But I've got Christian McCaffrey at 1. I put Saquon at 2. He's been so good for the Giants when healthy, and his offensive line has been awful that I think he's going to run all over the place behind that Philly offensive line. I think Nick Chubb at 3 is appropriate. I've got Breece Hall at 4. I think Kyren Williams deserves some more respect. The guy rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, and he only played in 2/3 of the season. Like, I think there should be more credit given to him. I've got Bijan at 6, ahead of Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs. I put Isaiah Pacheco at 9 and Derrick Henry at 10. So, let me know. Do you guys think Bijan Robinson is a top 5 running back? I know I'm all of a sudden a big hater because I have him at 6, but there are just a lot of really good players at that position, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Bijan end the year in the top 5 list of running backs this season. But for now, I'm going to put those guys slightly ahead of him and kind of make him earn that spot a little bit more. All right, our trivia question, by the way, top 4 NFC teams or NFC South teams in order of rushing yards. Coming in at number 6 in the NFL, the Carolina Panthers, averaging 123 yards a game since 2010. The Saints come in at 17, the Falcons at 25, and the Buccaneers all the way at 32, dead last in the National Football League, which, when you think about it, it's not that surprising, really. They had Leonard Fournette for a little bit. Doug Martin was really good, but they have never had a long-term answer at the running back spot. But hopefully with Bijan, that 25 for the next 15 years can turn into something closer to number 6 like the Panthers. All right, before we get on out of here, a couple of shout-outs I want to give to everyone watching. On a previous episode, I said comment ATL, and I'll pick some people to give a shout-out to. We got shout-outs for Robert Mira, James Chasen, Andrew Beto, Tyman the Buckeye, Alpha Quagmire 01, Tim Riley, Charles Sams, The Sports Hammock, Charles Cooley, and Brandon Wilson. Thank you guys so much for watching, commenting, and liking our content here. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure to do so. You're going to get the best Falcons content all year long.